If there were an award for the clumsiest employee in the entire media industry, Lena Brooks would win it hands down. 3 years in a row, no less. And right on cue, she was late. Again. Her alarm didn't go off. The elevator got stuck. The bus broke down halfway because it ran out of gas. And, to top it all off, a new intern had pressed all the buttons in the building like he was playing Guitar Hero. Lena sprinted down the hallway like a woman on the run from an explosion, her tote bag slipping off her shoulder, an empty coffee cup clutched in one hand, her last hope for survival. She burst into the company cafe, hair a mess, eyes wild. She scanned the room like she was searching for the Holy Grail. But the usual baristas were nowhere in sight. Instead, standing near the counter was a man in a black hoodie and jeans, arms folded, expression unreadable. "Hey you!" Lena called out, snapping her fingers like she was hailing a waiter. The man frowned and turned to look at her. "Me?" "Yes, who else?" "You're the only one here." Lena sighed like she had just walked out of a crisis meeting. "I know it's your first day, but speed it up, okay? I need a double shot espresso, no sugar, extra foam. Bring it to my desk in 20 minutes. Thanks." The man opened his mouth to respond, then shut it again. He blinked slowly, studying her like she was part of a social experiment. "Are you even listening? You're already zoning out on day one." Lena shook her head, patted him on the shoulder like a team lead giving instructions to a rookie, and marched off without another word. What she didn't know was, that man wasn't a new barista. He was Dominic Hale, CEO of Hale Media Group, and Lena Brooks had just barked coffee orders at her billionaire boss. That morning's meeting was nothing short of a disaster. Lena walked into the boardroom, already trembling. First, she tripped over the doorframe, banged her knee on the corner of the table, and tried to cover it up by spinning like she was rehearsing a dance routine. No one laughed. Except Lena, out of sheer embarrassment. Then, just as the head of strategy asked about the monthly targets, she let out a loud yawn. Not because she was sleepy, but because she was overwhelmed. But the worst part was still coming. "Lena, where's the performance report?" James, her team lead, asked. Her eyes widened. The flash drive. She had left it at home, right next to her jar of Nutella. She searched her bag, her laptop, and her soul, but found nothing but dread. James stared at her like he was rethinking her existence. After the meeting, Lena dragged her body to the café like a ghost in search of caffeine resurrection. And there he was, the barista from earlier. He stood near the espresso machine holding a coffee cup. A light at the end of the tunnel, Lena thought. Without hesitation, she walked over, snatched the cup from his hand, and took a sip. 2 seconds later, she spat it out dramatically. "What the heck is this?" "Black coffee," he replied, completely unfazed. "Where's the foam?" She glared at the cup like it had betrayed her. "I didn't realize foam was a life or death matter." "Oh, so now you're cracking jokes?" she snapped. "Listen, if you want to keep this job, learn the basics. Repeat after me. Double espresso, no sugar, extra foam. Say it." He raised an eyebrow and repeated it like a sarcastic robot, barely hiding his smirk. Employees nearby held their breath, and Lena noticed something odd. Why was everyone staring at her? Why was that guy over there filming? "What's going on?" she frowned. And that's when a familiar voice cut through the silence. "Lena." She turned and froze. James stood there, and beside him, Hoodie Man. No, Dominic Hale. James swallowed hard and murmured, as if afraid of lightning striking him. "You just gave an order to Dominic Hale." Lena blinked. "The CEO of this company." She slowly turned back toward the barista, who now had his arms crossed and wore a dangerously amused smile. You're the CEO?" she stammered. "That's right," Dominic said, voice low, calm but sharp enough to slice silence. "And you just barked coffee orders at your boss, twice." Silence filled the cafe. Employees stepped back. The security guard started whispering a prayer. At Lena? She wished for a hole in the ground and a time machine. Lena stood frozen, statue-like. She had just barked orders at the company's CEO, more than once, in under 10 minutes. So, no foam, she whispered, somewhere between a blackout and a breakdown. Dominic tilted his head, perfectly calm, unsettlingly so. No foam, but a mild crisis, yes. I didn't know, Lena stammered. I thought you were the new guy. I know, he said coolly, squinting slightly. And who exactly did you think you were? The cafe manager? Lena swallowed. I'll submit my resignation. No need, Dominic crossed his arms. Instead of firing you, I have a proposal. Proposal? She blinked, bracing herself like she was being drafted into a boxing match. You'll be my personal assistant. For 1 week, Dominic offered a faint smile, the kind that made you wonder whether to run or cry. Excuse me? Think of it as foam compensation. He stepped closer. 1 week at my side, no late arrivals, no clumsy accidents, and definitely no coffee spills on legal documents. You're joking, right? I'm the CEO. I don't have time for jokes, he said seriously, then glanced at the coffee splattered across the table. Usually, Lena briefly considered diving out the third-floor window and applying to be a florist somewhere far away. Lena's first day as Dominic's assistant began with her spilling hot tea all over his desk. Not on purpose. She meant to place the cup down gently, but her hand, true to character, decided to tremble like she was in the finals of a national quiz bowl. The result? Soaked documents, a near-dead laptop, and Dominic simply raised an elegant eyebrow. It's not even mid-morning and we're already destroying company property, he said flatly. Impressive. I'm so sorry. I'll clean it right up. Don't use your shirt. She froze, because yes, she was about to do exactly that. But that was just the warm-up. During her corporate survival boot camp week, Lena managed to send a major presentation to investors with a pizza menu attached instead of the actual report. Brew coffee for Dominic using matcha powder, leading to him sipping and pausing. There's depth. Knock over his CEO of the Year trophy, nearly braining a fellow assistant. Drop Dominic's cologne bottle in the boardroom, causing the entire staff to sit through a meeting that smelled like synthetic strawberry candy. Every time she made a mistake, Lena braced herself for termination. But strangely, Dominic never exploded. He'd just stare, sometimes silent, sometimes sighing, and occasionally smirking like he was watching a live sitcom. You're not mad? Lena asked after the infamous pizza flyer incident. I'm mad, Dominic replied, deadpan. But I'm practicing mindfulness. You? Mindfulness? It started the day you entered my life. By midweek, something unexpected happened. The marketing team kind of loved her. Lena, clumsy and chaotic, brought joy into a place filled with tension. People relaxed when she was around. And Dominic, though ever composed, he began loosening his tie, smiling more, and dare anyone say, enjoying the madness. One afternoon, while Lena awkwardly tried to hang a report using glue instead of magnets, Dominic stood behind her and sighed. Ha, you're a test of my patience. And you're my corporate survival course, she shot back. They looked at each other and for the first time they both laughed. Maybe, just maybe, this chaos was starting to feel like comfort. It all started on what seemed like an ordinary morning, until the entire office turned their heads toward one computer screen. News spread faster than the office Wi-Fi. Dominic Hale, famously composed CEO, had just been spotted at an event with his ex, Rebecca Quinn, fashion queen and media darling. A few pictures, a subtle touch, and suddenly the internet was on fire. Dominic, of course, was unfazed. He walked into the office looking like someone who sipped drama for breakfast and called Lena into his office. She entered like someone on trial for breaking the sacred company printer. But instead of getting fired, she got an offer. Not a job offer, a fake relationship contract. He needed a distraction, a believable partner to attend upcoming events with, to throw the media off Rebecca's scent. And for some reason, the first person who came to his mind was Lena, the same girl who had brewed him matcha instead of espresso just the day before. At first, Lena said no, firmly, partly because she was terrified, partly because the idea of pretending to be the boss's girlfriend sounded like the plot of a cheap paperback sold at gas stations. Real life didn't include billionaires falling for temp workers who once spilled tea on a merger contract. She even made a mental list of 5 solid reasons this was a disaster in the making, ranging from her inability to pose for photos, to her tendency to blush under pressure, to her long-standing history of dropping utensils at cocktail parties. And finally, because she was definitely not the type who attracted men in tailored suits that cost more than her rent. But then Dominic mentioned the number, and something strange happened. Lena's common sense took a coffee break. $5,000 a week, enough to pay off her credit card, move out of her possibly haunted apartment, and maybe, just maybe, replace her barely functioning college-era coffee machine. And then came the real kicker. Dominic casually mentioned that coffee would be included daily on him. With that, Lena's ideals, dignity, and personal code of ethics evaporated like steamed milk. When she finally signed the contract, she told herself it was just a part-time role, a short, scripted performance, pretend for a few weeks, cash out, and return to normal life. What she didn't realize was she'd get addicted to the coffee and the look in Dominic's eyes a lot faster than expected. From corporate disaster to romantic public illusion, Lena had somehow become the star of a real-life soap opera. She looked at herself in the mirror, then glanced over at Dominic, who was practicing his deeply in love expression like a method actor before a crucial scene. She sighed. She still didn't understand how this was happening. Maybe the universe was bored. Maybe Dominic was slightly unhinged. Or maybe, just maybe, a very small part of her thought, this might actually be fun. Dangerous, but fun. In just a matter of hours, Lena went from being a clumsy temp to the fake girlfriend of a billionaire CEO. Lena had never felt more out of place in her life. Her first event as Dominic Hale's girlfriend was held in a ballroom that looked like a palace, sparkling chandeliers, a red carpet, and guests who all seemed to have walked straight out of luxury magazines. And she wore a pale blue knee-length dress, the best she owned, last seen at her cousin's wedding, and a pair of white sneakers. Why? Because she thought no one would notice. Turns out everyone noticed. Dominic didn't seem the least bit fazed. When he approached her, adjusting his cufflinks with perfect composure, he merely gave a half smile. Bold footwear choice. Lena blushed, but he didn't tease further. Instead, he extended a hand. Dance? She almost choked. No was on the tip of her tongue, but somehow her hand found its way into his without asking for permission. On the dance floor, things started off surprisingly well. Dominic led gently, his gaze steady on hers. Lena focused, inhaled, stepped cautiously. She was just beginning to think maybe, just maybe, she could pull this off when, thud, one solid stomp, right onto his left foot. Before she could apologize, came the second, squarely onto his right foot. Dominic winced slightly but smiled. Was that tango or self-defense? Lena wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole, and fate wasn't done with her yet. As they left the dance floor, Lena accidentally bumped into a passing waiter. A tray full of champagne glasses launched into the air like mini fireworks, crashing to the floor in a sparkling cascade. Silence. Dozens of eyes on her. Then someone said, "Well, at least this party's not boring anymore." Laughter erupted. Lena stood frozen. But Dominic? He burst out laughing, the kind of laugh that echoed through the room, deep and unapologetic. "You really know how to make an entrance," he said, still chuckling. Lena covered her face. "I'm a walking disaster." "No," Dominic said, and for the first time, his voice softened. "You're the highlight." And in that moment, surrounded by shattered glass, awkward glances, and a string quartet trying to carry on, Lena realized something. She wasn't just a side character in his world anymore. And before Lena showed up, Dominic couldn't remember the last time he had genuinely laughed. Company events, to him, were a script he knew too well. Handshakes, champagne toasts, rehearsed small talk, and maintaining the perfect CEO expression under 1,000 camera flashes. But tonight, everything was different. From the moment Lena entered the room in her slightly off dress code outfit and bright white sneakers, the entire evening shifted. She didn't try to blend in. She was unapologetically herself, awkward, clumsy, and completely out of place. And somehow, that made her shine. She spilled drinks, stepped on his feet, bumped into waiters, and he, someone who once believed control was everything, suddenly found himself wanting to let go. He wanted to laugh more, to lean into the chaos, to see that panicked, adorable look on Lena's face one more time. For the first time in ages, Dominic felt happy. Not the polite, curated joy of a successful gala, but the kind of happiness that's messy, unexpected, and dangerously addictive. He watched Lena now, trying to blot wine off the carpet, hair a mess, cheeks flushed with embarrassment, and thought to himself, since when did boring parties become something to look forward to? The business trip to Hale Group's private island was meant to be simple, just a quick promotional event for a new travel partnership. A few strategic partners, some press coverage. Dominic had planned to be in and out before the weekend. But this time, Lena came along, and everything felt different. No paparazzi, no crowds, no staged hand-holding or whispered pretend laughs, just salt in the air, moonlight on the waves, and the slow, steady sound of the ocean's breath. That night, they dined on the beach, just the two of them. A small wooden table, 2 chairs, candles flickering inside glass jars. Lena wore a white sundress, hair loose, cheeks glowing with sea breeze, and maybe a little wine. She told him about the time she almost got suspended for taping the fire alarm in 2nd grade, just to hear how it sounded up close. Dominic laughed. Full, real, tilted head laughter like he hadn't in years. She kept giggling at herself, sipping wine, brushing hair from her face, when he fell quiet. His gaze shifted, softer now. No longer the sharp look of a CEO evaluating risk, but that of a man seeing someone who made him feel still. "Lena," he said gently, "I'm not great at saying these things, but you should know something." She paused, tilted her head curiously. "When you're around," he continued, voice lower, steadier, "things feel more real. No planning, no contracts, no pretending. The waves seem to hold their breath. You make me feel like I'm actually living." Lena's heart squeezed. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. She just looked at him, not the kind of look that ends a conversation, but the kind that opens a door. Quiet, sure, and full of something beginning. Dominic reached for her hand, slow and cautious, as if asking a question through touch, and Lena was the answer. There were no cameras, no eyes watching, no clauses in a contract directing what came next. Just one kiss, gentle, unhurried, achingly real. And this time, it wasn't an act. The next morning, they flew back to the city. Neither of them said much during the flight, but the way Dominic looked at her, quiet, gentle, made Lena believe that what happened on the island wasn't just a fleeting moment. She thought, those feelings might mean something more. Until the past walked back in. Monday morning at Hale Group was its usual rush of schedules and sharp heels. The office buzzed with typing fingers, phone calls, and tight-lipped executives. Lena walked in wearing a cream blouse and slightly oversized trousers, her heart still tangled in the memory of the island. Since that kiss, things had shifted. Dominic had softened, just enough to make her believe. The silences between them no longer felt awkward. They felt safe. Maybe, foolishly, she thought something real was beginning. And then, Rebecca showed up. She stormed into the office like a storm, with a fashion budget. Red dress, matching lips, and the kind of confidence born from being at the center of attention for far too long. Without so much as a nod to anyone, Rebecca made a beeline for Lena, her heels hitting the floor like war drums. "So, this is the little stand-in Dominic picked for his girlfriend role, huh?" Her voice was honey-laced poison, her eyes sharp and cold. The entire office fell silent. "How sweet," she continued. "You know, he ran this exact script with me 2 years ago. Same charm, same silence, different costume. Fewer witnesses this time, I guess." Lena stood frozen. Her eyes darted toward Dominic, just a few feet away, phone in hand, waiting, hoping for him to say something, anything, a denial, a look, a signal, something that would tell her. This wasn't what it seemed, but he was silent. No words, no reaction, just cold, stunning silence. Lena's heart twisted. She nodded once, took a shaky step back, and turned walking away before her legs betrayed her. Down the long hallway, Rebecca's voice followed like a curse. "Careful, with Dominic, everything's strategy." She didn't cry in the elevator, not on the train, but when she got home, shut the door, and leaned her back against the wall, her knees gave way and the tears came fast, hot, and silent. Lena couldn't remember exactly how she left the company. Everything felt blurry, like walking through a foggy dream, but the kind that was cold and suffocating. She walked for hours, aimlessly, wanting to leave it all behind, Rebecca's stare, Dominic's deafening silence, and the emotion that had stirred her heart just nights ago on a moonlit beach. It was just a game. That line kept replaying in her mind like a cruel soundtrack on loop. She had trusted him, believed that beneath that composed CEO exterior was a man who understood what real feelings were. She believed in the kiss under candlelight, in the way he looked at her when he held her hand, in the laughter he shared when she messed things up. But now, she felt like nothing more than an extra in some luxury play written by a rich man. A plot device, a comedic distraction to fool the crowd. Lena didn't cry, she refused. Tears would make this heartbreak feel tragically romantic, and she'd already been foolish enough. She just kept walking, silently, while something inside her quietly shattered. 3 days had passed since Lena disappeared from the office. Dominic hadn't called, hadn't texted, hadn't emailed. She thought he would let it go. Like any powerful CEO, when something stops working, he simply replaces it. But that evening, as Lena stepped into her favorite little café, the place she went to hide from the world, she stopped cold. The cafe was empty, every table cleared out, except one. Bathed in soft golden light, Dominic sat there. No suit, no assistant, no phone, just a small bouquet and a look in his eyes that was completely different. She turned to leave, but he stood, stepped toward her, and spoke. "I'm sorry." No excuses, no defense, just 3 words, clear, honest, and raw. Her breath caught in her chest. It was just 3 words, but they felt heavier than any grand speech. She clenched her jaw as if bracing against a wave of emotion she swore she wouldn't let show. He told her about standing in that office, watching Rebecca say all those awful things, and saying nothing. Not because he didn't want to defend her, but because he was terrified. Terrified that speaking too soon, too boldly, might push Lena away, that declaring something so real in front of the whole company might ruin it before it had a chance to grow. "My career was the one thing I never thought I'd risk," he said, "until you came along and made me realize I'd give it all up if it meant not losing you." Lena said nothing. She didn't cry, but her heart clenched. Dominic looked her straight in the eyes. "I don't know how to love the right way, but I know this. I don't want another day without you in it." And then he got down on one knee. Right there in the quiet cafe, right in front of her old sneakers. In his hand was a simple ring, shimmering like the moment itself. "Lena Grace Evans," he whispered, "I know I'm not good at this. Proposals, speeches, or timing. He smiled nervously. But I do know I want to keep seeing you trip over your own feet every day for the rest of my life. Will you marry me? Lena froze. No music swelled, no dialogue needed. Just her heartbeat pounding like a drum and tears that had somehow escaped. She nodded. Slowly, then let out a laugh through her tears. Only if you promise to keep accepting that I'll keep knocking things over. Dominic grinned, rising to wrap her in his arms. I'm counting on it. Lena's yes echoed in the quiet cafe like a soft note at the end of a long, messy love song. From that moment on, it was no longer a question of if it was real, but rather how they would walk forward together. And that journey began with a wedding full of sand, wind, laughter, and more than a few perfectly lovable mishaps. That afternoon, the beach was quiet but glowing with golden light. No massive flower arch, no endless red carpet, no choreographed dance number. Just the ocean breeze, a few wooden chairs, some close friends, and two people about to start a brand new chapter. Lena couldn't believe this was real. She, who once spilled coffee on her boss's laptop, tripped in boardrooms and assumed she was just a moment in Dominic's life, was now standing in front of him, wearing a simple white dress, hair tousled by the sea, hands trembling but eyes bright. Of course, she tripped on the sandy aisle and nearly knocked over the 3-tier wedding cake while helping the catering team. Dominic caught both her and the cake just in time. The guests clapped loudly, not because it was a flawless ceremony, but because it was so perfectly Lena. You know I'm not good at standing still, she whispered as she took Dominic's hand at the altar. I've been counting every time you almost fell since this morning, Dominic grinned, and I love every single one. When it came time for vows, people expected something formal, but Dominic looked at Lena, took a breath, and said, I used to think everything in life had to be perfect, on time, according to plan. Then you came along, messy, loud, completely unscripted, and I realized the best things are the ones you can't control. Lena smiled through a shaky laugh. I don't have fancy words. All I know is, with you, I don't have to pretend to be anyone else. And if there's someone who can survive me dropping everything for the rest of our lives, it's you. There was laughter. There were tears. The waves kept rolling in, quietly blessing them in the background. And then they kissed for the first time, as husband and wife. No fireworks, no cinematic trailer, no perfection. Just a messy, sandy, laughter-filled, love-soaked day. Dominic watched Lena skip across the beach, hair wild, wedding dress stained with frosting, and thought, married the wrong person? No, I married the right person in the most wrong way possible. And I wouldn't change a thing.